that is just saying Subhanallah, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Glory be to my Lord the Exalted, glory be to my Lord the Most High. And the Prophet ﷺ said that on the Day of Judgment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets up the scales and He commands them to raise their heads. They didn't do sujood for a night. They did sujood for an existence. The entire time, prostration, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. And they look up, and the first thing that they say is, Subhanaka ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik. Glory be to you, we did not worship you as much as you deserve or you have the right to be worshipped. Think about that for a moment. Not a night, not even 80 years. From the time they were created to the time of the Day of Judgment. Nothing but tasbih, glorifying the greatness of Allah. And on the Day of Judgment, now you can raise your head. Subhanaka ma abadnaka haqqa ibadatik. I didn't do enough. You should have been worshipped more. You deserve more than this, but this is all that I could physically have given you. Now the angels never got distracted by food and drink and intimacy because they don't do that in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan. They never got distracted by choice. They're not like human beings. All they do is worship Allah. And that's all they can say on the Day of Judgment when they see the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We didn't do enough. So dear brothers and sisters, what is the point of this for us in terms of a feeling and an impact of Laylatul Qadr in particular? There are three things that the ulama mention in terms of understanding, having a greater qadr of Allah in your heart, a greater estimation of Allah in your heart. Three of them. Number one, Allah is worth a greater sacrifice. A greater sacrifice. As-salatu khayru min an-nawm. I was tired. I'm sleep deprived. I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. It's hard, right? Sometimes it gets difficult. I feel the pain of that sacrifice. Well, Allah is worth a greater sacrifice. So the next time you're pulled between the voice of righteousness and the voice of wickedness, when you're prompted by the angel that prompts you to do good and the shaitan that prompts you to do evil, which voice are you going to listen to? Allah is worth a greater sacrifice from me. So you know what? Allah is worth less sleep. Allah is worth more sacrifice. Allah is worth the pain of sin. Allah is worth the pain of blame. Allah is worth all of these things, a greater sacrifice. That's number one. The second thing that the ulama mention is that Allah is worth a greater share. What does that mean? A greater share of your wasa'il, your means to reach Him. And that is as-sam'a wal-absara wal-af'ida. It starts off with the faculties that Allah has given you of hearing. Allah is worth a greater portion of what I listen to. Allah is worth a greater portion of what I look at. Allah is worth a greater portion of my thoughts, of my contemplation, my fu'ad, what occupies my heart. Allah is worth a greater portion of a greater share of that. So it starts with that. Then they say, Allah is worth a greater portion of my time. Because time is a means to reach Allah. Allah is worth a greater portion of my wealth. Charity is better than what I spend for my own desires in this life. What I spend upon the poor and the oppressed for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What I spend upon righteousness. مَا عِنْدَكُمْ يَنْفَدُ وَمَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ بَاقٍ. What you have disappears, but what is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remains forever. It's worth more of my wealth. And so there's an observable increase. This is the observable part. An observable increase in the share that you're now going to allocate of your speech, of your listening, of your sight, of your time, of your thinking, of your thought, and then of your wealth, of your efforts, of your deeds for Allah. A greater share. And the last thing, a greater hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What do you want from Allah? You know, when someone makes dua to Allah and there's a doubt, can He really answer me? مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. You didn't give Allah His due estimation. When someone is pulled, I don't know if, am I going to really realize like His Jannah and what Allah is promising, is it really going to be there and is it really going to be all worth it? مَا قَدَرُ اللَّهَ حَقَّ قَدْرِهِ. You did not give Allah His due estimation. When a person seeks forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And they say, I don't know if Allah is going to forgive me or not. I have some really big sins that I've committed. Ma qadarullah haqqa qadrihi.